Hey, welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, you are going to love this show. If you're a returning subscriber, hey, bestie, how's it going? See what happens when you subscribe. You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. On this episode, we talked to the one and only Leah Marone about her new book, The Serial Fixer. Okay, so this book is coming out. I think you will all love this book. You should go on Amazon right now and pre-order it or order it, depending on when you're listening. As a as a serial fixer myself, I found this conversation extremely interesting. The book is extremely interesting with a lot of great tactics on how to sort of break this pattern of taking on too much or making everybody's problems your own and really kind of tuning into yourself, bringing more presence to your conversations to really drive more sort of sustainable impact and not getting burned out. So we are in an epidemic of burnout, and this book and this conversation speaks directly to that. So hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
All right, we have the one and only Leah Marone back on the Ethics Experts. How's it going, Leah?
Good. How are you?
Good. So excited to have you back. You have a new book coming out, and I want to talk all about it because this is a book that I need to read. It's something I think a lot of us struggle with. So let's kind of dive right in. Tell us about the book and what it covers and what made you write it.
Okay, awesome. So it's called Serial Fixer, Break Free from the Habit of Solving Other People's Problems. And I really tried to hit, overextension, cyclical exhaustion, burnout, like these things that we've heard about for the last few years, which rightfully so. I wanted to hit it at a different angle and go deeper with it because I feel like this stage, like most of us can stand up and talk about and regurgitate kind of the symptoms of burnout and what we should be doing and just say no and do these things. And they all sound well and good. Mm-hmm. But I think when we try to execute some of these things, then we have these internal conflicts and these protective parts of us that kind of jump up and steer us otherwise. And this is why it's so hard to kind of maintain this consistent self-care and execute these healthy boundaries externally and internally. So I'm really trying to have people look at kind of the imbalances in their relationships, the exhaustion, the resentment, just all the things that a lot of us are feeling at this high pace that we're operating at. And really take a deep look into how you show up to interactions, how you show up in relationships, and the roles that you occupy, because that might just be the thing that is kind of fueling some of this discomfort, overexhaustion, and imbalances overall.
Yeah, this burnout thing, sometimes this new term comes out and everybody's like, yes, and then it drifts into a platitude very quickly, and everybody feels it and they don't really know what to do about it other than shutting the notifications on their phone off. But I think it probably goes something, it goes way deeper. And I think the title of your book kind of speaks to that, because those of us who feel like that, we usually maybe have trouble saying no, or trouble with boundaries, or trouble with not falling into this sort of burnout cycle.
Right. And if I could this is kind of a list of just check-in questions that I've used in a lot of my past, speeches and workshops. And if I could just share them, because I think it really will help people resonate. And the first few, you might be a serial fixer if you help others open up, but struggle to do the same. You have trouble setting boundaries and overextending yourself. Your self-worth is tied to being needed, which is sometimes a tough one to swallow. You feel unappreciated or taken for granted. You attract people who heavily rely on you. You step in and try to, fix others' conflicts and mediate. You neglect your own needs to prioritize others. You feel guilty or anxious when you can't help. And I think those right there, if that resonates with you on any level, that right there is a really good indicator of some of these deeper issues that I think are perpetuating the burnout that we're just, to your point, kind of putting these Band-Aids over.
Yeah. All those questions kind of resonated with me, and I feel those things to varying degrees at different times. In writing the book, what kind of commonalities did you see? Is it just those questions? It's almost hard to imagine that people don't say yes to those kinds of questions. But what do you see kind of as an underlying thing? Because, you did come at this with a bit of a different angle. You did go a lot deeper than just kind of the platitudes and the 5, bullet points on how to, prevent burnout. What did you learn in writing the book, and what are some of those sort of underlying commonalities?
Yeah, I think I just kept seeing themes, whether it was through my private practice and working with clients, or even just working with leaders, with teachers, and parents, and even through my own work. I think, when we're operating with a high level of compassion and empathy, which is wonderful, like these are strengths, we don't want to diffuse these. But when we're operating with those high, incredible things, level of empathy, high EQ, we tend to overextend. We tend to jump in and fill this role that wants to soothe, solve, accommodate, fix, prevent the person that we're interacting with from feeling discomfort. And it's kind of this internal dialogue of like, I will endure, I'll accommodate, and God forbid I be stamped with something that is like a negative judgment. I want to be liked. I want to be needed. I want to be deemed as a good teammate. I want to be deemed as a good parent. I want to be deemed as a good leader. And so I'm going to push and push and push and try to be as useful and purposeful as I can in order to get that connection and that sign off and that external validation. And so I was seeing this imbalance, I guess you could say, and just this correlation of people in very highly empathetic roles and positions that were perpetually saying, like, I know I need to take care of myself. I know this is too much. I am hearing all the bells and whistles. But again, when it's time to execute that self-care, that recovery, those resets, another internal protective part kind of chimes in and is like, but you know what? If you take that time, if you do shut the laptop, if you don't respond to this, if you do let your kid kind of figure that out, then I don't know if you're as good as you think you are. I don't know if, you're doing the best that you can. And our self-worth is very much tied into that. And you can see where that becomes the motivator to overextend, to fill these roles, and to jump in and get things done.
Do you think that internal voice, do you think people have always had that? Or do you feel like that voice is like turned up to 10 to like a greater degree in like today's day and age?
Oh, I think that's been around. I mean, just, think about all the parts that we're comprised of, right? Like we have like these inner pleasers, inner critics, inner rescuers, all these parts of us. And that's how I think we're able to like flow through different states. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, man, I'm on it. And you're accessing that grit, you're accessing all this motivation, this confidence, and you're ready to go. You have this plan, you're all in. And then like 2 days later, you're like, where the hell did that go? Now
Yeah.
I'm like drumming up all these things that could happen a week from now. I'm rehashing things from the past. I'm being criticized. I'm, questioning my worth, questioning this. So I do think it's a constant, and that's why it's so hard sometimes to be human, is that we're constantly flowing through these different filters and these different parts of us that are motivated by different things and ultimately trying to protect us from not feeling certain things. And I think that's where I really go into, really highlighting the main three bodyguards, if you will, that I bring up are just your inner critic, your inner pleaser, that motivator to be liked, to not be stamped with anything negative, and then that internal rescuer of like, I care deeply and I want people to want me. I want to feel that connection. I don't want to be lonely.
Why do you call those bodyguards?
Yeah, because they're protective parts of us that generally come to fruition when we're young, right? We feel something that we don't want to feel again. And sometimes that's in our control, sometimes it's not, given how we're raised, who we're raised by, what's going on. But we have these parts of us that are almost ignited that are just that. They're our bodyguards. They're protecting us and doing everything they can and working really hard to prevent us from feeling some of these things that collectively every human on the face of the planet doesn't want to feel.
So do you think then the game is not to shut those bodyguards off, right?
Right.
So what is the game then? Just balancing them, harmonizing them more or something?
You're absolutely right. And that is the new formula. The formula I think that a lot of us subscribe to, and I know I was fed, even as an athlete growing up, just ignore it. Just distract yourself. Right. Listen to positive music, smile, just keep working hard, and I subscribed 100% to that. And then I'd have like emotional hangovers and waves of anxiety that, it was almost like my internal balloon was like, yeah, you did a really good job at that for a couple of weeks. And now we're going to have like a pop and you're going to have this like upheaval and this rush of just all this negative stuff and motion. And that's just it. It's not necessarily about shoving these things down. That's what leads to addiction, using everyone problems and everything as shit, right? And so about, really connecting with these parts and doing the work to under what they are trying to protect you from and what they're not trusting. And that seems abstract, but that right there, those two questions of like, what is this part of me trying to protect me from, gives you an incredible baseline. And also, like, what am I not trusting about me? Like, what's going on there? And that's where you can really start to take these little micro risks to build that internal muscle, build that self trust, and kind of soothe those parts of you that are super ignited and working almost too hard.
So would you say that, that this sort of burnout epidemic is sort of a collection or a collective of all of us, so many of us not being able to like quiet those internal muscles or work in harmony with these bodyguards? Is that kind of the issue that we're talking about?
I think that's a big part of it. Yes, because if you think even about a leader, I was actually talking with a leader earlier this week, and she's like, I'm moving into a new role. I'm going to be leading more people, and I want to be prepared. I want to do this right. I'm really passionate about this. And so we really started to tease apart how she's led in the past. And how she's led in the past is to kind of come in and take things off of everyone's plate, right? She's very savvy. She's very intellectual, EQ high, and people will come in and share something like, "Oh, this is just a lot," or "I don't know where to go from here," or "I don't even know how to communicate this." And her first thought was, "Let me alleviate this. This is what good leaders do. This is how they help their team." And so she came in as a fixer. She came in with like, "I'll talk to them. Let me clear that off your plate. Let me give you a rubric on how to do this. Let me handle this." And you can see that like she was exhausted because she was putting out fires all the time. She subscribed to the old school open door policy, and she wasn't able to have time for herself to process, to work, to access kind of those deeper levels of thinking. And so it's about, though, like challenging that critical part of her where it was like, at this next level, think about how you can support rather than solve. Think about how you can create and meet people where they're at so that they get the repetitions in to build those muscles and gain that self-confidence. And it's not going to be on your timeline all the time. And that's really hard. But think about how that opens up when you were really mindful of the role that you're placing yourself in, how that opens up empowerment opportunities for your team. And you're not jumping in to fix and solve because the critic in you is constantly in your ear saying, if you don't do this, you're not a good leader. If you don't solve this and alleviate this person, you're probably not meant for this job.
And do you think that those critics are, I'm just kind of guessing here, but there's usually some picture that we have of what a quote unquote good leader is or what a good athlete is. It's probably not that accurate of a picture that we end up sort of like rigidly holding on to. That's sort of that's very fixed. And then it's this constant game of trying to like live up to that, that archetype that probably doesn't actually exist in reality. Do you think that's right? And if that's right, then how do we start to like readjust that and re-question this, this idol really that we've been holding for so long?
Yeah, you nailed it. And what a good question, because even when we're incredibly young, our brain is starting to put these associations together of how we
Right.
define, like you said, like this is someone who's good. This is a good athlete. This is a good mom. This is a good leader. This is a good teacher. This is a good person. And that's great. That's how our mind is starting to make these correlations and kind of keep us, embedded in our values that we're creating as we go along. But a lot of these things are pretty rigid. A lot of these things that we associate at a young age and kind of fuel, as we grow older, it's important to challenge them, because when we stay in this zone and the critic kind of occupies this real estate of like, ooh, if you take that risk, or if you go beyond the boundaries of what we've kind of fabricated since we were 5, I don't know about that. We may feel some pretty tough things that we don't want to feel, and it's my job to protect you from that. And so you can see where even in parenting, you kind of have this whole concept of like, my kid is in distress. My kid is struggling here. Let me jump in. I will call the teacher. I will arrange this. I will do this. I will structure this. I will do everything so that I can alleviate that pain, discomfort, that angst from my kid, because then it confirms like I'm doing my job as a parent. Right. And
Right.
so that's correlates, and kind of you can connect that with leadership, parenting, friendship, all the things where, again, those associations we make, I mean, we have to step back and think, is this really fueling something that's helpful for me and everyone else? Or what is this part of me not trusting? Or what is this part of me trying to protect me from? And is it sending me 10 bodyguards when I just need one?
Yeah. When you say what is this part of me not trusting? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think, if you think about again, kind of the boundaries, if you take some of the burnout advice and you're like, okay, I'm going to shut down my laptop at 6. Like, I'm done. All the emails are coming in. I know that, but like, I'm done. I'm going to try really hard. You can see where that sounds great. And you have this plan and you go into it. And then it's like 5:59 and you're like, oof. And you're seeing emails come in and you start to shut it down. But again, this critic is like right there front and center, like, oh, this isn't the protocol. Like, this isn't what we normally do. And it starts feeding you scenarios of like, what if something really urgent comes in? What if all of a sudden you make this shift and people that can get a hold of you at 9 p.m. or 11 p.m., all of a sudden you're not available? What are they going to think of you? And you're going to be so behind the next day. And, all these scenarios and kind of this fear-based thing, they're not trusting, or the critic within you is not trusting that you can recover, that you can do this and nothing catastrophic will happen. And so it's this whole recovery thing. It's also like thinking about your physical health. If you took a week off from working out and you're gung-ho and you've historically never done that, and you're like, you know what, I need a week off, that critic's going to chime in and be like, oh, this is different. And if we don't work out for a week, we're really not trusting that you're going to get back into it. And you're probably going to gain like 500 pounds overnight and you're going to be a sloth. And I'm like, oh, your whole world's going to go to hell.
Yeah. And then like all your fuel is like this fear-based fuel based on some sort of catastrophe that probably has never occurred. Mm-hmm. And then you're just kind of, you're kind of chasing, or you're not chasing anything. You're actually like running from something.
Yeah. And that's why
you're running from something that's probably not even actually chasing you.
You're absolutely right. And that's why that question of like, what's happening? Where's the lack of self-trust here? Like, how is this being over dramatic and catastrophized, and what's going on? And like appreciating the work that your parts are doing of like, wow, you're working really hard to protect me from feeling, isolated, from feeling incompetent, from feeling embarrassed, from failure, whatever it is. But like, if you could just move over a bit and trust that like the other parts of me can come up too. And we historically are confident. We historically can recover. We historically can converse with people and communicate about things. And so I want you to stick around. You're doing great work here, but you also deserve a break. And I think that it sounds bizarre, but that internal dialogue is so helpful and so much more productive than kind of that, like, I need to ignore this. What's wrong with me? Does anyone else feel this? Let me just, do this or distract myself so that I don't have to deal with this stuff, and go out and let's deal with other people's stuff because that's easier.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's easier. What? Yeah, that's actually, that's interesting to say it that way. Why do you think it's easier? Is it because it's like a room we haven't gone into and lived in and had to organize, and it's easier to sort of see externally these sort of other problems that we've historically fallen into this like habit of fixing serially?
Yeah. And sometimes you can get immediate feedback. Right?
Yeah,
if you
right.
tell somebody something, if you say you're having this interaction, it's a wonderful distraction. It's part of how we're wired for connection. But you kind of get this immediate emotion, this immediate feedback, this like, I'm doing good, or wow, this person, see, I'm confirming, I'm helpful, and they're needed. I have great ideas, and it confirms and kind of fuels this story, which we all need, in that validation. But you can see when we're constantly interjecting ourselves, jumping into fix and solve, and kind of using just external factors and people as our main playbook. Wow, there's no room for in here. And we'll know later, but like, there's no room. And that's where you kind of get this spike in anxious thoughts and these dips in mood, because the self-connection is just not there.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like not tuning into yourself and like what you yourself need, A, and then B, almost you feel like, and by you, of course, I mean you feel like you don't like deserve that. You don't deserve what you need. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're not even on the priority list because you're so externally focused. Mm-hmm. Do you see kind of a correlation between, this is maybe a false dichotomy, but some people seem to be very sort of like, driven by some kind of external validation. And of course it's a spectrum, but I'm saying some people are sort of more driven by external validation. And then some other people you meet are just they have this sort of quiet strength and they don't care what anybody else around them thinks about them. Do you feel like burnout rate is different across these different groups, or do you feel like it's might be the same because we're all kind of subject to these internal critics and those kinds of things?
I think we're all subject to like the turmoil that can happen and internal
Yeah.
conflicts. I think it's just a matter of the source that we try to like seek in order to soothe it. But you know, you'll see kind of different types of serial fixers, and one of them being like the saint, right? The one who's like, I'm going to operate correctly. I'm not going to ruffle any feathers. The do-gooder, right? And just always thinking about other people's needs and wants before their own, which again is a beautiful thing. But you can see how that recipe right there is just setting them up for kind of sleepless nights or anxiety that they have to suffer through alone, or kind of this disconnect and this hunger for like, I'm doing good, right? Like everybody likes me, right? And that's where sometimes you get that confusion of like, I'm working so hard. I'm bending
Hmm.
over backwards to make sure that everyone I care for and lead and love is like happy, is fine, is good, but you're not in the equation. And that disconnect, your parts are going to be screaming at you at some point, like,
Yeah.
hey, what are we doing here? What's going on?
Yeah. And it can lead to a lot of resentment too. You know,
Absolutely.
the classic helper who does so much for other people. And at some point, you know, externally, it seems like, oh, wow, this person has like a bottomless well of like helping. And at some point, though, if you're not getting that feedback, or you're not sort of satiating yourself, however you want to say it, that can sort of really break.
Mhm.
So you mentioned like types of serial fixers. What are some of the other types you've seen? We talked about the do-gooder. What are some of the other
Mhm.
types?
Yeah, I mean, there's the doormat, right? So that's kind of prone to being taken advantage of. Again, just kind of that internal dialogue of I will endure, I'll figure it out. Don't worry, you know, and just kind of again use me. I'm your tool. And it's again, it's wanting to distract themselves, I think, from a lot of the internal work and connection, and really just focusing on what they can do for other people. And you can see where this formula, it's not malicious. I think a lot of times we are trying very hard to kind of assess like, ooh, okay, I need to put energy here. I don't, they have that. I can do this. And we're constantly doing that as humans. And you can see where the doormat is essentially a doormat because people are constantly looking at them like, they got that. They'll take care of that. They'll do that. And they don't know how to break free from that. It's just like,
Right.
well, everyone expects me to do this, and this is what I do. And if I don't, then they're probably not going to like me, and then I'm not going to get any connection. So I'm going to keep at it in hopes that like I'll be happy, in hopes that like I'll get what I need and I will get validated and everything will be great.
So that doormat, they have like a is at the core, like, is the commonality just a problem with boundaries, or do you think at the core it's a problem with like lack of connection for what we ourselves need? And if it's kind of both, do like what are some of those other kind of commonalities, and like what do you think the differences are between the mix of, you know, let's say it's those two things. Do you see a different mix of those things show up in different sort of types of serial fixers?
Hmm. Absolutely. I mean, there's kind of this, we're all working on this, right? There's self connection. This is a lifelong journey, but there is a lack of that. And so you'll see even with like the steamroller type of serial fixer, the kind of the know it all, the person that jumps in, the person that interrupts, the person in meetings that kind of bulldozes everyone because their critic is gnawing at them saying, if you're not heard, if you don't appear like you got your shit together and you know what you're talking about, like people are going to take you seriously. You're not going to get
Mm-hmm.
ahead in this world. You're again going to be isolated. And so it comes out in different forms, and you can see where there's this kind of deficit in setting external boundaries, but a lot of it too is
Yeah.
not really soothing and kind of connecting with those parts of you that are fear-based.
It's so interesting. Like I didn't even think of a steamroller as a type. I think as we were talking about this, I just felt like it's, you know, the different types are just ones that end up getting taken advantage of, or either because they're pulling things into themselves or because they're allowing things to get sort of dumped on them. But to your point, that bulldozer, the person driving the bulldozer is, it's kind of the same thing. They feel this sort of internal need to like fix a problem, and I'm just going to, you know, swoop in and do it, and I'm going to talk over people, and it kind of goes back to perhaps that executive you were talking about, or that leader who was stepping up into to that new position. They had to act in a bit of a different way by enabling people and empowering them, not just having to bulldoze their way through it.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you do. I think if you kind of catch yourself in conversations where you're prematurely relating, someone, even in a casual exchange, someone shares something about what they did over the weekend, or like, yeah, I've been really struggling with this, with this new project. And you immediately, which all of us will because of our associations, but you take the bait almost, and you just start relating prematurely. Oh yeah, back 3 years ago I did the same thing. Or, oh well, this is what you got to do, this is exactly what I did. You can see where it's like inserting yourself too prematurely to fix and solve and over relate, and you kind
Yeah.
of totally discombobble the energy that might have been created. And for this person that you're interacting with to get some of their own processing skills to kind of externally like figure it out and get some repetitions on their own. And I think the best leaders, and I think we've talked about this before, like the best leaders are the ones that can start with validation and meet people where they're at and kind of calm that internal urge to be like, oh, I know exactly what you should do. And you might, but that person has to add their own flavor to it. They gotta find their own recipe in order for those things to cement, and in order for them to get the repetitions in to build that self-trust and to kind of calm their own internal bodyguards, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because they have their own set of internal bodyguards, to your point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are there more types than we talked about? Are there like thousands of types? It's so interesting.
Those are the three that I highlight, kind of the saint, the doormat, the steamroller. But I think the commonality is just, instead of supporting, you're jumping in to fix, to solve, to soothe things within you, to confirm things within you, and to like, it's just like, I want to alleviate this person. I want to prove to this person this. And it's just jumping in to fix and solve rather than meeting people where they're at. And you can
Isn't it
see
interesting?
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, please.
No,
I was just thinking, like, it's kind of interesting because it's almost selfish. Like becoming a serial fixer, or like if you are living as a serial fixer, it's kind of a selfish thing. It's kind of a self-focused thing that's sort of masked as helping those around you. But to the extent that it's really driven by you trying to like soothe something internal within yourself that you're maybe not tuned into, or it's it's an old framework, or it's an old pattern, or it's an old, picture of perfection that's unattainable and isn't even worth pursuing, or it's something outside of your like realm of like actual control or influence. It really is kind of putting yourself above the other person.
It is. And this is where I'm still, the recovering serial fixer, like in the works, where it's like, I have to be very mindful of timelines. And what I mean by that is whether it's with my family, whether my professional, career, it's just like, I have a certain timeline in my mind of like, well, this needs to be figured out, or this needs to be done. Because if those things are done and they're solidified and they're in motion, I can calm myself. But when they're still not, or I haven't heard back, or I don't know this, or like I have to work harder at soothing myself. So if y'all could just get the program together so that I can feel better, that'd be great. But you can see where that is. That's kind of this lens of like, you all meet me at my timeline so that I can feel good. And if you're feeling good, then I'm like, it's just this whole interesting self-awareness exercise where it's like, what is this part of me, and kind of this urgency, this angst, this discomfort? What is it trying to alert me of? What am I not trusting? What is it trying to protect me from? And again, those questions give you such a baseline to work from the inside out rather than kind of following these patterns. And I think fueling imbalanced relationships, and also just like things that aren't working for us, or the roles that we occupy.
Do you find like this, like if somebody's really deep in the serial fixer mode, there's almost like a panic or an urgency that kind of dominates everything else that makes it really hard to slow down?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it really kind of steps in the way of getting in shape with being present, and just being kind of by yourself. It's like, I have to be doing something. I have to do this. My children need this. My team needs this. I need this. And if I'm not kind of feeling this stress, feeling this, I'm not working hard enough. Like I'm actually lazy, or I'm, not doing all that I can. And that's a huge association, I think, that a lot of us build at a young age, like of just be all that you can be, do work hard, do all, and it's wonderful. But you can see where sometimes our inner bodyguards take that to the extreme. And when we have opportunities for a sense of calm, opportunities to just feel enough, it's foreign.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost a very like dangerous thing to say, do all you can, because have you ever done all you can? Like there's arguably always more that you could have done. So that's like, That's such a, that's like the, the turtle with the fishing line and the carrot. It's like you're never going to get that. Like you can always, Monday morning quarterback anything that you've done and always find that there's something else you could have done. So like you can never close that loop. You can never sort of, I mean, athletes, they often say, well, we left it all on the field. And I get that to some degree, but it's also like never really true. You know what I'm saying? Like you could always push a little bit harder. So it's really kind of a question of like, what's good enough?
Mm-hmm. It is. And that's a great analogy. And, I think those of us with fierce inner critics, we'll replay a lot of things, conversations, things we did, things we didn't know. And that's like this opportunity, and you have to work at it and get reps with it to kind of soothe those parts of you. But like playing fair, that's when you do start collecting data and fact checking yourself. And like with the information I knew a week ago, like, do I trust that I executed and did what I could do? I know more now. And am I really playing fair with myself? And so I think it's this constant, kind of drive to collect data on yourself and to find these patterns within yourself, but to play fair. And really so many people, especially type A go-getters, myself included, we get trapped in this all or nothing thinking, right?
Yeah, right.
It's either all or nothing. It's black or white. And I have to call myself on that a lot and think about, all right, it's not black or white. It's like, find the gray, like channel the part of you that's like, it's okay. I need to give myself grace. This is all good. And the part of me that's like, just won't let me sleep because it's reviewing every single thing. It's like, how can I meet myself in the middle and kind of honor both parts and what they're trying to protect me from and what they're motivated by? And that's been so helpful to not shove one of them down, to not try to be like, what's wrong with me? I hate this part of me, get rid of it. It's listen, acknowledge, work with it, soothe it, and meet yourself in the middle, almost as if you're your own mediator with all these conflicting things and parts.
Yeah, kind of honoring both of those voices, perhaps. But we tend to your point, just really, really kind of listen to one and really turn the volume up on one and really kind of turn the volume down on the other. For me, I think the thing I struggle with is what will it mean if I turn the volume up on that other voice? And what will that lead to? Will it lead to apathy? Will it lead to like selfishness? Will it lead to, being, maybe I'm sharing my inner critic with you right now, but like, will it lead to me being a version of myself that like I wouldn't be proud of?
That's it. And you're right. You were kind of talking through your inner critic right then. And I think that's where, again, you can kind of take these little micro steps and think of them as mini experiments. So it's not going in all or nothing. Example, if Sunday afternoon, you have this grand plan for the week ahead of like, I'm going to get up every morning at 5 a.m. I'm going to work out. Enough is enough. I'm in my 40s. What the hell am I doing? I should have my shit together in this area. I'm going to eat this. I'm not going to eat this. I'm going to do this. Like you have this grand, rigid plan of all these things that you're going to do. And you're really channeling through one part of you that fears that, you're not operating in a healthy way. You got to kick yourself in gear. And then come that Monday morning when your alarm goes off at 5 a.m., you might have another part that's like, it's really early. Like, is this really going to make that big of a difference? Like, do we need to do morning workouts? We know we didn't sleep very well. And gosh, if we didn't sleep well, we're probably not going to be firing on all cylinders. We might be, a little cranky with our team. So maybe we should just revisit this. Maybe we should just really latch onto the peace that we have right now in our bed. And so you go that route, and guess who's blaring at you and gnawing at you later is your critic. I'm like, what are you doing? We have this grand plan, and you just totally botch it on day one. And I
knew you were a loser. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everyone else has their stuff together. And so I think it's just like acknowledging, again, what both of those parts were trying to protect, peace and your health. But both of them are kind of coming in too strong. And so it's like, how can I meet myself in the middle, honor what both of these parts are trying to do for me? And maybe I don't get up every single morning at 5 a.m., but I'm gonna say, you know what? I got to do it at least twice during the week. And I can do that Monday, Tuesday. I can spread that out, but it gives me an opportunity to check in with myself, but also kick myself in the butt if I need to. And you see how both are like, maybe that's doable. But being that mediator and taking these small steps of change to build, kind of more data with that, see how you respond and see how your internal parts respond. Are they yelling at you? Do they get it? Are you building that trust that if you take a day off, you're going to be able to find that motivation again and kick butt?
Man, uh, such an interesting thing you say about like checking in with yourself. And it's like when you're so outward focused on fixing other people's problems or, opening, having your open door policy for people to just dump their stuff, figuratively, onto your doorstep, there's almost like no time to check in with yourself. And this disconnect happens where like inevitably we crash and burn because like that way of being is just not sustainable. So then it ends up kind of creating a lot more volatility in our lives than, something that's slow and steady and sort of more, I don't know. Yeah. It's just like, that's more sort of sustainable,
And present, right? I mean,
and
again,
present. Yeah. So why do you like, why didn't this book come out 30 years ago? Not like, why didn't you write it when you were 10, but like, why is now such an important time for this book? Like, why is this epidemic, kind of greater now than at least I've ever, seen?
yeah, yeah. I mean, for the most part, I think a lot of us have the hustle down, right? We know how to hustle, we know how to churn stuff out, whether we're doing it presently or not. But I also think too, I'm seeing people work and overextend and kind of put themselves in all these different places and all these different roles, but yet still feeling kind of this loneliness and
Yeah.
feeling unfulfillment and this lack of connection and with others, like how deep, deep connection and even with themselves. And so I think it's time to kind of have this reframe to kind of look at this cyclical exhaustion, this burnout, these, imbalances in relationships and kind of taking the brunt of things. And why am I doing this? And there is a different way. There's a way that we can still lead with the amazing qualities of compassion and empathy and, connection with each other, but keep ourselves into the mix.
Yeah. You can open the windows in your house and still have screens. You know what I'm saying? You can still have fresh air in your house without, having the windows totally open. And I think that's something that a lot of us who are kind of these serial fixers struggle with, like that sort of in between thing of like having a screen there is okay. I don't know, maybe that's a bad analogy, but it's just like everything doesn't have to fly in and keeping some of the stuff out. You can still, you can still be empathetic. You can still be a helpful person. You can still, be there for other people without kind of just letting all the critters kind of crawl into your house. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And also to be empowering because you're not taking away then people's opportunity to process, to own their stuff, to get reps in, to build their own self connection and their, just on their professional journey or in their relationships. I mean, I just think that's a big piece of it too, that I think will be motivating for a lot of people that care is that you're empowering, and allowing other people to do this internal work as you're there too to support them.
Right.
I think too, I was thinking about this the other day in a session with a client, and I said, "Wow, you're holding a lot of yarn balls right now that everybody expects you to kind of untangle." And she's like, "What?" And I got ahead of myself and I said, "Let me back up." I said, "Think about if like everyone you're talking to, you're a good listener, you care, but they're just throwing you this tangled mess of yarn and, historically you just start untangling it. And one ball of yarn isn't heavy, a few balls of yarn aren't heavy, but like that's a big mess and you don't even know where your ball is. And so
Yeah.
rather
It's not
than
even your mess,
yeah, catching it. Think about everyone holding their ball of yarn and you maybe just pull on a few threads. You're supporting, but they keep ownership of it, right? You're still there. You're still leading with empathy or creating space, but you're not taking ownership of it to do it for them. Because guess what? You're going to keep doing that. Everyone's going to just keep throwing them to you.
Yeah, it's not even, first of all, it's not even yours. And second of all, you can't even untangle them all. So it's really, to your point, maybe I'm catching up to you. It's kind of like doing a disservice and it kind of flies in the face of what we think we're achieving when we take all those balls of yarn, from others. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the example that sets to those around us. When you like, how do these behaviors end up like perpetuating the circumstances for these behaviors to continue? Let's talk about kind of pre-state, early, before we kind of, solve this problem. Like because we're all kind of, we're all actors in the play. Like we're all participants in the play. We're not, we're on the stage. How does it sort of perpetuate these cycles?
Gosh, I mean, that goes back to even just, you're right, like even early days of who's modeling for us. And if we can see that, our parents, our caregivers, just people that we respect, people that we look to help kind of build these associations, if they are empowering, if they're not swooping in, if they're not taking everything on themselves and don't carve out time for them, like we're cataloging that. We're making those associations, even with leaders, the leaders that can say, like, make sure you're taking care of yourself, make sure you enjoy that vacation, make sure that you don't do this, but they're not modeling any of that. They haven't done the work to kind of, calm those protective parts within them. Like, they're saying one thing, they're doing another, and that what they're doing and what they're modeling is really the thing that is affecting the culture. I mean, that's what people are looking at. And so I think about, like, even in parenting, it's okay. It's excruciatingly hard sometimes to watch your child go through something that's uncomfortable, that's painful, but you can see when you're there supporting and not just going in and fixing and solving or saying, just get over it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, it's fine. Like, when they get to experience that flow and feel themselves start to recover and go internally as well as externally to find things they need and build resources within, that's building confidence. That's building
Right.
self-trust. That's empowering the people that you're leading or parenting or, going through life with. Like, you want them to be able to channel that, right? And so
Yeah, and
that's how
build
you
that.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they got to fall off the bike a little bit. You can't ride the bike for them. They have to fall off the bike and scrape their knee a little bit. But I think, I used to work in financial services, and we would do these engagements for private equity funds. We were kind of like the home inspectors, and the private equity funds were like the house flippers, right? So we would go in and we would find risks in the companies that they were trying to buy. And in that game, there's a team is formed for a project, and then that team breaks apart, and then you go work for another partner, and you go work for another partner. So I really got to see at a young age these different sort of like personality types, or these different types of partners who would, the project is a function of the partner, and the partner is saying what's important and what's not important. And there was one guy that I worked for, and this guy was like, I mean, he was, if you ever got put on one of his projects, it was like, here we freaking go. The next month is going to suck, because like our work product was a PowerPoint presentation essentially, right? And his would be 150 slides, and every possible analysis that needed to be done, we would do. And it was just this panicked energy kind of, driving. That was the fuel that we were all kind of subject to in these, working till 11 every single night and working all weekend. I mean, 150 freaking analyses is crazy. Mm-hmm. And then there was another guy I got on his project, a few times, and everyone loved working for him because his, our reports that we would generate on his projects were like 30 pages. And we would have an appendix that had some more, analyses, but it was like 20 or 30 pages. And it was very targeted. And, he always had this philosophy, like every deal only has, a few major issues, and we have to really get those major issues right. And there's a lot of other stuff that like doesn't matter. And so, and he had the most revenue, in the firm, the clients absolutely loved him. He was a guy I really learned a lot from. But over the years, I've kind of recognized that like expertise or growth in any kind of area is knowing like what matters and what doesn't matter. And I think when we're in this serial fixer mode, we just think that like everything matters. Every single thing has to be perfect. And we never sort of ascend out, up beyond that sort of initial viewpoint. I mean, it's a very sort of juvenile, 150-page report is crazy. I don't care what you're talking, in any industry.
You're a center critic.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I can't miss anything. We have to look under every single rock. And I think that's kind of a corollary, or kind of like a metaphor for like what out of any of those three types, you can't say no to anything. Like he couldn't say no to any of those analyses. He couldn't say no to any of them. We have to do them all. And, the doormat or the do-gooder or the steamroller, they can't say no to that inner critic and say like, I don't need to speak up here. I don't need to take on this other project. I don't need to take on this other ball of yarn.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so you make such a great point where, just kind of looking through this filter when it comes to the people that we work with or that we interact with. And again, it's not for us to fix and solve, But to just have this kind of view of like, we all are kind of struggling and have this lifelong journey of kind of, aligning and soothing those big, intense parts of us. But sometimes those come out right in the workplace. And we're getting
Totally.
a front row view of sometimes the emotional like upheaval and kind of the projection because it's based in that protective quality that that person is showing you that they themselves are struggling with.
Right.
And it's a really, I think, empathetic, high EQ way to kind of navigate. Again, you don't have to necessarily do anything. It's not yours to fix and solve, but it gives you this different view of how you respond to it and how you work with it rather than like, man, I can't take it anymore. It gives you a different way to kind of operate in the role that you then fill.
Yeah, and I like how you talked about like running these little experiments because I think what might be scary about saying like, okay, well, I'm not taking any balls of yarn. I'm not, my door is closed now. That seems like that could be very sort of jarring for our self-image or, that might sort of prevent us from even taking any steps forward. But if we can start to view them as little experiments to say like, okay, what if for this ball of yarn, I just leave it with that person? Or what about for this issue, I kind of count to 7 instead of just speaking up immediately. You can start to kind of run these little experiments and see, is the whole world going to fall apart? And, odds are it's not going to all fall apart. Is that a good way to kind of get started on this kind of a path?
Absolutely, because it is. It's meeting yourself in the middle and kind of being able to take these little risks, these little changes, and collect data. And, right out of the gate, if you're someone that's listening to this and you're thinking, like, oh my gosh, I definitely have these tendencies, it's okay. You're far from being alone. But think about, too, just experimenting with when you are in a conversation with someone today, tomorrow, whenever. Think about instead of jumping in and kind of, fixing, solving, giving that advice prematurely, think about first just starting with validation. Think about first how that can come in so many different forms where you meet someone where they're at. That could be paraphrasing what they said. That could be a head nod. That could be more intense eye contact to let them know, like, I'm here. That could be to say, wow, no, it sounds like you have had one hell of a week. Like just starting with that validation and pausing because that person will hear and see and be able to feel that like, wow, you're putting energy into trying to decode what I'm saying verbally and non-verbally. Wow, okay, you're creating space for me. And then they're going to respond and take it where they want to. And that
Mm-hmm.
is where you kind of start to support and don't solve. We're still maybe sharing, like, have you thought about it this way? Or like, what would happen if this? Or like last year when you felt this way, I remember you doing this. Like, would that apply here? Like, it's not about you just being this passive person, like, well, it's not
Yeah.
happening. You're still working. That's effective, active listening. But starting with that validation with our kids, those we're leading, our partners, like our family, and just starting with that because that reduces the urge to like, well, you just need to call them. Well, you just need like that. It takes you another direction where you're with the person and you're collaborating rather than fixing and solving.
And that's not apathy, which is kind of the antithesis of like a fixer, right? Somebody who's like, I just don't care, not my circus, not my monkeys, that's your problem, cold, kind of, stiff arm, people away from you. But that's a way to kind of stay active, but just do it in a bit of a different way. That sort of
Yeah.
validation.
You're pulling the threads, you're not grabbing the ball of yarn. And this book in no shape or form is trying to like cancel out or not keep, empathy, compassion, all these things at a high
Right.
level because they are. I'm so for like it's amazing. They're superpowers. It's just how can we still work with them and filtrate ourselves through them, but not be depleted and not have all this false ownership and false stock everywhere where then there's no room on the plate for us. And in turn, we're empowering other people and we're still there to support.
So when somebody goes through the book and they fix their serial fixer self, what does the future state look like? And what does the path to that future state look like?
I mean, my hope is that, there's just more connection with you. There's more connection, authentic connections with other people. You're able to access more presence, right? You're able to kind of feel most of the things that collectively humans want to feel. And when we are present, we feel more alive. And so it's not this frenzy of over accommodating, being 5 steps ahead, jumping in, kind of filling in the cracks and crevices, like when we necessarily don't need to. And I think that's my hope, is that people will walk away with a higher level of self-awareness, a different way to reframe things, different filters to kind of, put information through, collect data with, and ultimately like really diffuse some of this loneliness that we're feeling with those around us and with ourselves.
Yeah, it's like that's so interesting you said it that way. It's like it's hard to be very close and connected with others if we're not like connected with ourselves, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Man. Well, I am so excited for this book. I really love your work. I love your heart. I love the impact that you have on really the world. And this book is like really well timed. So this is like the perfect time for this book to come out. There's so many people that I think should read it. And it's just something, fixing this serial fixer thing is something that I just think is so important in our own lives, because so many of us, kind of to what we've been saying, so many of us have sort of gotten here by doing that, by taking that high agency approach, by taking on problems and running that extra mile and, putting ourselves last to some degree. But that can kind of turn very toxic. And, as you ascend in an organization, or as your roles of responsibility change, or as your children get older, kind of what got you here doesn't get you there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. You nailed it.
Thank you so much, Leah. Appreciate you so much for coming on The Ethics Experts again. We're going to feature your book on our webinar series and add that to the library. And we'll see you on the next book, I guess.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you creating this space for me. It's always so good to see you.
Good to see you too. See you next time.